Hey guys, how's it going? Aaron here with Lower Lawns. It has been a long time since I've made a video, but we've got some plants going down today, and I was kind of excited about it, so I wanted to do a little before and after, and then set up the GoPro while I actually do the job, or the first half of the job. The rest of it I'll either do, if I can't do it today, I'll do it on Saturday. Today's Thursday. So I'm going to get these plants in today, get the preen down, get some fertilizer down. Might talk through one or two little points, but today's project is basically getting these plants down, and it's around this customer's shed, and you know, it's kind of plain and boring and, you know, just kind of there. So we're going to landscape it a little bit to sort of frame the space and make it look like something nice and presentable. So yeah, let's go back here and take a look. I'm going to show you befores, and then I'm going to set up the GoPro and start putting some plants down. Alright, so here's what we're working on today. As you can see, just a little shed out in the backyard. Not much to it. It is exactly as described. We're going to be putting 2 flower beds on either side, a bunch of plants on either side to sort of frame up the shed. And in the front here, if I can find it, right here and right here, I'm actually going to build some planter boxes that we're going to put seasonal flowers in. And we also talked about doing some sort of planter here around the window or something at some point, just to, again, add a bunch of color, add some something right to the front face of the shed. But today, this week, our project is to get that side and that side all flowered up. Let's set the GoPro up. Alright, so here we are walking the plants back and forth, and that's really the worst part of this job, is having to walk all the way across the yard. But you know, I've done worse. It's you know, it's part of it. But basically what we're doing here is just laying out a really rough sort of layout, rough idea, and then I'll basically walk back and forth and make sure that from every angle around the porch, closer to the house, you'll be able to see everything. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. Okay, so here we are. The plants are staged, quote unquote. What I mean by that is I've just got them set out in their pots in the spaces they're sort of going to go in. And one of the things you may notice is spacing. You know, there's not a ton of plants in this area. There's a reason for that. Everything here, over time, hopefully by the end of next season, should grow quite significantly. Particularly these in the front, they'll fill out, they'll come out a little bit. And so the roses in the back also, they're only 3, but with this spacing, they should make a nice proper hedge full of red flowers. Another thing that I hope you notice is the color, right? We have a variety of color. You got your evergreen, arborvitae here in the middle. Okay, well, let's talk. We have your emerald green arborvitae in the middle, limelight hydrangea, loropetalum, and false thread cypress. So there's a lot of color, and you're going to have somewhat of a variety of color all year long. These will keep their color The lower pedalum will keep the color, sort of. They do lose a little bit, but these should fill in and really kind of, once this is established and that is established, they should really kind of come together, not touch, but get really close. And that'll take a year or two, something like that. The hydrangea will fill a majority of its space. So you see how small it is now. It should kind of come right kind of close to the other plants and kind of close to the shed. You'll notice I've got a little gap here in between so that you can actually see it from the front. The arborvitae should grow up a little bit. I think we'll maintain it at the height of the shed. It's going to take it a few years to get there, but it will eventually. And the rose hedges, probably maintain it about that half bar right here, just to keep it sort of low and manageable and keep the blooms coming. But there's that. And another thing you'll notice possibly, the spacing is not symmetrical on both sides, and the reason for that is this side is the side you're always going to see, always. So you can have a little bit more quote unquote appropriate spacing, but you can see from here, which is where you're going to be standing most of the time, you can't see much until you get to right about here, and then you can see more of your plants, and you can see every single plant from this angle, right? So that's why your spacing's different. If I had done similar or the same spacing, it would be just a little bit harder to see everything until you get, like over here. So these plants are pulled like 6 inches out toward the front of the shed compared to the others on that side. And I may still, in fact, I'm probably going to pull them like a little bit closer this way, just because I do want to be able to see all of these plants. And now what that's going to do is, you're going to see here in a minute, I'm going to dig out our trench bed, dig out the bed with our trenching tool, and you're going to have slightly different shapes on both sides. But again, that is for the purpose of being able to see this side of the plants from where you're going to be most often, and not hiding stuff. And we got rain on the way. Don't think you can see that, but I want to get to digging this out. I'm going to go back to GoPro footage, and yeah, I'm definitely going to pull these out a little bit more. The final note I guess I would make is, a lot of people would be like, oh, what's this big open empty space? It's not technically dead space, because you're never going to see back here, right? You're never going to see this little spot right here, because ideally the two plants in the front up here, the lower pedalum and that cypress, the false cypress, will thicken up and grow, and this hydrangea will get big. It will fill in. So most likely you would never see whatever we would end up planting here. And another thing that prevents that is the shed, right? Why would you plant something that you're never going to see, unless you come all the way to the side of the yard that you're never on? One of the things I always try to do is intentionally plant smart, and plant with a lot of different factors sort of considered, right? Like seeing all these plants is going to be difficult if I planted it exactly symmetrical to the other side there. So I am going to move these a little bit more, then I'm going to dig out our trench, and you'll see that happening in this next shot. Okay, so right here, what we're doing is digging out our trench, and yes, I do hand dig these every time that I can. If the job is much bigger than this one, I'll take a steel, so I've got my combi system, and it's got a bed edging redefining attachment. But I personally I love the crispness that this gives, because it's hard to explain, but when you put a bed edger, a hand bed edger into the ground, when you press it in, you actually kind of compact things a little bit, so you don't get really muddy edges, and it'll stay crisp for a little bit longer. Especially when you have dirt like this, it's just super hard, annoying, sticky Georgia red clay. When you do it with the bed edging attachment, it just stays crisp much longer. And so this is the way that I always prefer to do it, but you can't always do everything by hand. You got to get machines occasionally, and it's just so much nicer in my opinion, especially once we get the mulch on here. You can't really beat a crisp edge like that. So moving forward, pretty much just trim the weeds down. Your mulch does a lot to kill the weeds. It's not a perfect solution, but your first step is you're going to get your mulch down, and then you put your preen right over top of that, or snapshot, which are both landscape pre-emergence. So they prevent weeds. You're not going to get zero weeds. It's not possible, but it does help quite a darn lot. So I'll weed eat the weeds down to the ground, and then I'll come back and put my mulch over top. And you know what? Things are going to go through, and as you go, you can work on sort of spraying things out and kind of perfecting that clean, weed-free look over time. And some flower beds are just going to be more stubborn than others, right? You're going to have ones that you'll never see. You'll do the job and you'll never see a weed again, and then you've got beds where it's just covered almost instantly, it seems, the next week. This is my favorite part, is cleaning up the edges with a trimmer. So I'm just going to be quiet now. You can watch this. Okay, so here we go with, it's probably both the worst and the best part of doing a landscape install is the digging of the holes to plant them. It just takes a while, and it is kind of a physical thing. And then you have our situation here, which is just this hard clay. And you'll see here, as I plant every single plant, I always try to put a little bit of fertilizer in there, with the goal pretty much being to just give it a little bit of boost, especially in these, these horrible soils that we have here. I mean, pretty much every single yard is just horrible. And it's very difficult to get certain plants to grow, but it's possible. So always try to fertilize. On occasion I will backfill, but the ground here is actually soft enough that I don't feel that it's necessary. And I'm actually doing this voiceover like something like 6 weeks after the job, or some, I can't remember how long it is, but it's been a few weeks, and all the plants are doing just fine. I actually mowed this yard today, and I went there specifically because part 2 of this video, I actually wanted to put like the after shot of the grass because I seeded the grass here too. But anyway, that's beside the point. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the selection of plants, because I get asked all the time like why I used, like, by customers and stuff, like, all the plants a little small, isn't it? It's like, yeah, but it'll grow, and you want to go, typically, in my opinion, everyone's gonna have their own, but I want to see a plant grow and mature in that space. I want it to get used to and adjust to that soil from a young plant on, because this is something that people don't really think about a lot. Some people are not going to agree with it. Okay, that's fine. But when a plant is going through its life of growing, it's going to adjust to the soil, the conditions that it's in, right? And so if you plant it young, as we're doing here, as you can see on the screen, it gives it a chance to adjust to this environment, adjust to these soil conditions, and you're just going to have a better chance. And it doesn't always work, but you know what? Even if you have amazing soil, sometimes plants don't always work. Like, part of doing this is you're going to get some dead plants, right? This is a little concept that has been really hard for me to kind of convey, because it's so, to me, it's one of these things that, like, it's so blatant and obvious, right, that sometimes plants are going to die, and it's going to be just because. So every so often you'll just randomly get a plant to die, and a customer will ask you about it, and it's like, well, yeah, plants die sometimes, and they expect you to like go into it more, and I'm like, I don't know why it died. Maybe it didn't get watered enough, maybe it was over fertilized, maybe your dog peed on it. This exact yard that you're looking at me work on, there's stuff in the front that sorry, the sound just kicked in. But anyway, there's stuff in the front of this yard that we planted. They're little hibiscus trees, and the cat scratched them to death. They used a scratching post, like, and I can't predict stuff like that. Like, things happen in everyday life that on occasion it's gonna kill a plant. So let's just replace it. Like, there's no point in like trying to deduce every little thing. Like, you can make little minor adjustments, but it's just part of planting dozens and dozens of plants. As far as amendments go and changes, I like to do most of them as I'm planting, which is the fertilizer that you're seeing. Typically that'll be enough, as long as the soil is soft enough. I found that to be just fine, and this job proves it. I mean, you can see right here just how just how bad the dirt is. It's just clay. And putting a little bit of slow release fertilizer on it, these plants are doing just fine. Come springtime, this landscape's going to start to fill out. Roses are going to bloom. The hydrangeas are going to bloom. The loropetalum is going to start to expand and get bigger, and it's just really going to fill out. Look really great. The slowest part of this whole landscape is going to be the arborvitae trees, and honestly, the most risky tree in this landscape is the most risky plant is the arborvitae trees. They're pretty finicky, but I've planted them in worse soil, and they've done amazing. And then I planted them in amazing soil, and they don't, like, they're super temperamental. But here we are, just planting the roses. And this is what I like about doing landscapes this way, is this one's gonna have so much color. It's gonna have your reds, it's gonna have greens, yellow, and then we put 2 blue planter boxes, which you're gonna see in another thing coming up. But that's the end of this one. Pretty much it's all straightforward. Just plant the plants, getting the thing ready, and you'll see more of this in the next video where we come out to mulch it and then do work up in the front. Thanks for watching.